when you are here, whether you're here for a short term or a long term, try to really learn about the culture. So it's important that you go out and spend time with the locals, learn about the culture, and really enjoy the time that you've got here.
Kia ora, this is Arun Jacob, your friendly and frank licensed New Zealand immigration advisor, as well as education advisor, coming to you from the AJV Global Studios here in our beautiful city of Hamilton. Today present with me is one of the most popular young faces around in New Zealand today, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to all of you Dr. Gaurav Sharma, who is our Member of Parliament from Hamilton West, and it's a pleasure to have him here today. Thanks, Gaurav, for taking the time and being here today. Welcome to the AJV Global Studio.
Thank you, and curated, Arun. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, a lot of people around the world, especially of the Indian origin, are quite curious to hear about this young man who's made it to the Parliament in New Zealand and created a sort of a history by taking your oath in Sanskrit. Talk us through that a little bit.
Look, so I recently got elected as Member of Parliament, and I had to choose between, different languages that I could take my oath in. And actually every member who was from some sort of different ethnicity or diaspora took oath in their language. Somebody took it in Arabic. I think people took it in Chinese as well, Mandarin. So I thought, well, what Indian language should I choose? And it often becomes a bit difficult because you take it in one language, somebody else is unhappy, or so when I was at school, actually, I learned Sanskrit, and I speak Hindi, obviously. I speak Pahari as well. I can understand Urdu. So I thought, well, I think it'd probably make more sense as Sanskrit, because that would encompass a lot more other languages as well. And also, in some ways, it was paying respect to my Sanskrit teacher. She unfortunately passed away from cancer quite early on, so just remembering her in some way and just paying tribute to that.
What a beautiful tribute to your teacher. So coming to another very important question, Gaurav, is normally politicians are supposed to be those old, wizened, grey-haired people, and here we have a young person like yourself. How did this passion start for you to be involved with politics in New Zealand?
Well, it's actually a question that gets asked a lot, but it's a long-winded answer. And I normally, sort of talk about the different steps that led me to it. It's not something that you wake up one day and say, I want to be a politician. So for me, my primary career was in medicine. I'm a doctor. And what happened is I spent some time in Mongolia working there. And I was trying to increase access to medicine and surgery for people there, trying to figure out how can we do things, change the system, do things in a different way. And what I realized was, as a doctor, I was only working one-to-one. Okay. But in order to change the system, you need to understand, how do you raise funds? How do you hire the right people? How do you set up an organization? And medical school doesn't have time to teach you that when they're trying to teach you anatomy and physiology and everything else.
Yes.
So for me, that was the first step of understanding that there was a big gap in my knowledge, and I needed to bridge that. So eventually what happened is I ended up doing a business degree in Washington, the George Washington University on a Fulbright scholarship. But before I even went to Washington, I got involved in the Labour Party in New Zealand. And that was under Phil Goff, who's now the mayor of the city. But before that, he was a member of Parliament from Mount Roskill. And he was a great mentor. I'm more interested in policy. I've sort of worked in a few different places. I worked in Switzerland, I worked in Spain, eventually worked in Vietnam as well, and in New Zealand as well, around policy. So public policy, public health, that's what I'm interested in. But what Phil made me realize was that, politicians can make a huge difference. And I think there is a lot of that negative connotation in certain cultures, especially in Indian cultures. I remember I got interviewed on an Indian TV, and they said to me, but politics is seen as a bad thing. But I think people like Phil made me realize that, if you can get to that level where you become a politician and you have a good heart, you can make a positive difference. And that's what eventually sort of led me to become a candidate and get into politics. So it was, I think, a slow movement towards understanding that as a doctor I was making changes, but little changes and little differences, but I wanted to do something on a bigger level.
Fantastic. So that's the story about Gaurav's entry into politics. Another question, Gaurav, is obviously you moved to New Zealand with your parents at quite a young age.
Yeah.
How did New Zealand treat you growing up as a migrant in this country, and what kind of values did it instill in you, or just talk us through your New Zealand experience?
Yes, so I first came in 12, and my dad had been here for a few years before us. He was just trying to set up in New Zealand. And I went to Auckland Grammar, which again was, a very different experience.
Good school.
Good school, but I came from Himachal, small place. The place I was born in Himachal, there's about 700 people.
Oh, wow.
And the road doesn't go to the house, so you actually have to walk 4 or 5 k's from the house through the fields. From the main road to the house through the fields.
Yeah.
So coming here, it was quite a bit of a culture shock for me. And English wasn't my first language, so I really had to sort of learn that. Obviously learn the culture as well. But I think what helped was, for example, especially being a student, going to Auckland Grammar made a huge difference. There was a mix of people from different ethnicities. I had Chinese friends, I had a lot of Sri Lankan friends, obviously Pakeha friends, Maori friends. And that really made me, realize the sort of ethnic diversity we've got and the uniqueness of each culture, but also things that bind us together. At the end of the day, everybody wants to make a difference in their society. Everybody wants to have a good education and to be able to take care of their families. So I think there was a lot of stuff that I learned at school, which really helped. And actually, I recently gave my maiden speech, and I had my headmaster there from Auckland Grammar.
Fantastic.
But also my form teacher, so fifth form teacher, what I think is now year 11. Always get confused in the system. So they came along to my maiden speech in Parliament as well because of what an impact Auckland Grammar had on my life.
Oh, fantastic! I mean, what a great moment it would have been for all those teachers who played a role during their younger days. So you did mention while we were speaking that there were a lot of new members of Parliament who were speaking in their languages, including Arabic and Sanskrit. And where do you see New Zealand headed in the next couple of decades? We seem to be becoming an increasingly multicultural, multi-ethnicities kind of a society. So what do you see as the future for New Zealand?
Yes, I mean, even if I reflect back to when we came, I remember, New Zealand was very different. The shops weren't open on the weekend. You couldn't get, say, for example, you wanted to buy Indian food, you couldn't get anything. And I remember when, for example, Grandpa would come from India, we would get him to bring us some, kurkure chips.
Absolutely.
Or Maggi noodles.
And the pickles, not to forget.
Well, exactly, that's right. So, it was very different then, and I reflect back on that and look at how far we've come. And diversity in some ways is not just about, just celebrating Diwali.
I agree.
Or, having more Indian shops. But it's about making sure that people are well integrated into the society both ways. The cultural flow goes both ways. I think moving forward, definitely, our sort of diversity is increasing. From what I understand, there's like 200 plus different cultures that are here. And I think what is important for us is to make sure that our different cultures talk to each other. That conversation isn't just, between the mainstream Pakeha culture and the Indian culture, or Pakeha culture and Korean culture, Pakeha culture and Chinese culture, but also that the Chinese are talking to the Indians are talking to the Koreans, the Koreans are talking to the Maori. So I think that will help a lot more in helping us understand other New Zealanders.
Absolutely. Now, to pose a quick question to the doctor in you, COVID-19, when is it going to go away?
Well, hopefully soon. But it's been interesting. And being a frontline healthcare worker before I got elected, I remember when it started, and initially it was sort of like, it's that thing happening somewhere else. And in a few weeks you realize, well, actually it is sort of coming closer to home. And you sort of try to give advice to people. I remember telling some of my patients not to go overseas and travel overseas. And at that point, some people didn't heed my advice.
Yeah.
And now we've seen, obviously, we've gone through a lockdown. We've done quite well in how the Labour government's done. But I think it will take time,
Okay.
even though New Zealand has done well, there's a lot of countries who are still going through their peaks, if anything. But I think that vaccination is a big step in that regard. And especially in New Zealand, we've been quite careful in how we've done the lockdowns, and how we've provided support as well.
Yes. Your top 3 pieces of advice for anybody who is going to be in who's already in New Zealand as a new migrant, or going to come very soon. The top 3 pieces of advice you would give to someone.
Top 3. Well, I guess one thing I would say is when you are here, whether you're here for a short term or a long term, try to really learn about the culture. That's one thing I realized even from my own travels when I went to America to study for 2 years. Sometimes you're so busy in your studies, you're so busy in your work that you don't really get to that live those experiences. So it's important that you go out and spend time with the locals, learn about the culture, and really enjoy the time that you've got here. Second thing is obviously same thing back. Learning about culture doesn't just go one way, and as Kiwis we obviously love learning about other people's culture. I think I read somewhere we have one of the biggest diversity of restaurants and a lot of diversity of cultural festivals that we celebrate. Like Diwali is such a big function, Holi is such a big function. So if you are Korean, Chinese, Indian, Filipino, wherever you come from, we'd love to hear about your culture, your food, your language. So also, make an effort to teach other people about, things that matter to you, because that's in a way part of soft diplomacy as well, isn't it? Growing our languages and cultures across the world both ways. So that would be one. And then the third one would be, I guess, there's always other things to do outside of medicine and outside of study and work. And again, sort of relates to my first point. But what I meant is, for example, when I was in DC, I was doing an MBA, but I was studying journalism.
Fantastic.
I was part of a theatre group. So there's things like that which you can do again, which I think can help enhance your career, but also your life. So do take part in that, and there's a lot of things available in New Zealand.
Last couple of questions. Future plans of Dr. Gaurav Sharma?
Well, future plans. Well, for now, I'm quite excited about being a member of Parliament. It's only been, I think, about 5 months. Looking forward to generally making a difference for people of Hamilton and the wider community. And then we'll see how things go. Right.
Is Dr. Gaurav Sharma single?
Yes, Dr. Gaurav Sharma is single, that's right.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The question that the world has been wanting to ask. We got the exclusive on that right here at the AJB Global Studio. But hey, thank you so much, Gaurav, for coming in today.
Thank you for
having me. It's been a pleasure, and we wish you all the very best and a bright career ahead for you.
Thank you so much. And one thing I just quickly want to say is also, thank you for all the work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
It's been a difficult year, especially in the education sector and the immigration sector. But I think it's good to have people like you who are, leading the way and still keeping the light in terms of, keeping the light going in these times.
We're carrying the New Zealand torch very strongly.
Exactly. And I think when things finally improve, you'll come out really well.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, Gaurav. That's the whole idea to all our viewers, is that it's not a question of if, but when New Zealand will open its borders. In the meantime, do take inspiration from people such as Gaurav, who can show that a migrant can come into this country, can pursue a path and be successful in whatever you choose to do. And there you have it. And again, once again, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.